In some parts of the world, the democratic process is on full display. In others, rulers find draconian and often convoluted ways to cling to power. The 27-year rule of Burkina Faso's President Blaise Compaoré came to an abrupt end on October 31st, after days of protests triggered by his attempt to amend the country's constitution to allow him to run for a fifth term. People had had enough. But Compaoré is far from the only world leader to use creative means to stay in power. Here's a look at the tactics of other would-be presidents for life for holding on to the office. Uzbekistan's Islam Karimov has been president for almost 23 years. He won his first 5-year term in 1991, amid accusations of suppressing the opposition and vote rigging. In one of his elections, even his so-called opponents endorsed him. During his rule, he has managed to get referendums passed that have not only extended his terms, but that seem to have done away with the country's term limits altogether. Paul Biya of Cameroon has been president for almost 32 years, winning his first election as the sole candidate on the ballot. Each subsequent election has been clouded by allegations of fraud. Term limits would have prevented him from running again after his 2004 victory, but in 2008 he pushed to remove the limits, triggering violent protests. The revision passed anyway, also granting the president immunity from prosecution after leaving office, assuming he ever does. Zimbabwe's Robert Mugabe has held power for almost 35 years. He emerged from the country's struggle for independence as a hero and proceeded to turn Zimbabwe into a one-party state. A specialized security force, known as the 5th Brigade, is believed responsible for the deaths of thousands of civilians from opposition areas in the 1980s, and over the years, Mugabe's regime has been accused of everything from vote rigging to intimidating political rivals. The Assad family in Syria and the Kims in North Korea are political dynasties that run police states and forbid any semblance of a free press. When his father Hafez died after 30 years as president, Bashar al-Assad won an election in which he was the only candidate. After Syria's constitution was revised to lower the legal age of the president so that he could even be eligible. Assad ran again for president in 2007, against no one. In 2014, Syria held its first multi-candidate elections in decades, with Assad claiming an 88% victory based on a 73% turnout, even though large swaths of the country were fighting a civil war and unable to vote. Assad currently only has 14 years under his belt as president, but if he steps down, it probably won't be because he lost an election. North Korea is notorious for its sham elections. In March, the country reported a perfect turnout, with all parliamentary candidates receiving 100% support. Human rights groups estimate that up to 200,000 people are held in North Korean prison camps, most for being perceived as threats to the regime of some kind or another. Jang Song-taek, an uncle of Kim Jong-un, who was the country's de facto second-in-command, was reported in 2013 to have been executed for trying to overthrow the government. The Kim family dynasty has been in power for 66 years. It would appear that being a so-called president for life is easy, as long as you're willing to rule with an iron fist and a flagrant disregard for your country's constitution.